Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. Welcome. Thank you guys for being here. I'm super excited. My name's Sol Rodriguez. This is my first time hosting an FMDiSC. A little bit of history there, just really quick. I was actually scheduled, some of you may have heard the story. I was actually scheduled to um, host on a temporary basis while we had somebody out way back in March of 2022. And if anybody remembers what happened around that time period, things
2020.
kind of got screwy. So that meeting ended up kind of falling apart, and I never got to actually host. But here I am. We're 5.5 years later, and this is attempt number two. So, welcome. I'm very excited to have a conversation this morning with Matt Navarre. And this is a little bit different, I think, because we're not specifically talking about technology or AI or all the common or popular recent topics, but we're talking about the I guess life
Getting
cycle
old.
of development, right? And so Matt has graciously offered to be interviewed today about uh, the decision-making process of semi-retiring, right, Matt? Semi-retiring after having how many years of being in the FileMaker community and FileMaker businesses?
Over 40.
That's a significant endeavor right there for sure. So I'm sure you've got a lot to tell us, and I think that there are probably a lot of people who very relevant topic for, not only because they're also in a similar season in life, but even somebody like me who, I can kind of look forward to what you've done and kind of gain some wisdom from some of that. So we'll go ahead and get started, and let's talk about, your kind of process. And let's start with what led you to make the decision to sell your long-term file maker businesses. And then the second half of the question is, and then why did you decide to move to Greece?
Um, let's see. I'm going to pop up this whiteboard first before we do that too, because I want to know.
Yeah.
This is one of the things you and I talked about. Um, yeah, I'm not seeing it, so maybe I won't.
So Matt and
It's
I,
like a little
while
map
you pull
thing.
that up, I'll just say we've had some fun kind of just prepping for this, getting to know each other, being in the file community for 40 years, there's still people that he's meeting, and I'm one of them. And so it's been kind of fun to just see what we have in common, and there's a there's a an interesting I don't know, trend, I guess, or the trend's not really the right word, but where a lot of us FileMaker people are also music people. So Matt and I have that in common. We've kind of connected on that. You want to say what this is, Matt?
Yeah, so as we kind of get started, grab a dot and drag it to where you are. I am here. Um, just to kind of see how the distribution goes. And I'll start asking. Let's see. So kind of going back to what you asked, like gosh, where do I even start? Was it a decision-making project? Where do you want me to start with
Yeah,
that?
yeah. Did things like naturally wind down for you? What kind of led you to make the decision? Were you just kind
Hmm.
of getting tired, or was it actually a vision of, opportunity to do something different? Or, what was kind of the decision-making process? Because I'm sure there's a lot of people, in a similar season who are starting to think about this. And so, it'd be insightful to kind of hear what your decision-making process was and what were some of the factors in that.
Well, I started, and I'll have to rewind a little bit. In 1999, I started a company called Pre-One, co-founded that one. It was a FileMaker vertical market company. And then I grew that one to around 1 million in revenue and then sold my share of it. The company's still around. They're still a pretty big FileMaker partner. And then with the proceeds of that, I kind of took a 2 year sort of, I don't know, semi-retirement sabbatical, whatever. And in that time, threw myself into development and a public health thing, and I started my next company, AppWorks. Well, at the time it was MSN Media, and then grew that one to a certain size. And I think I just reached my expiration date. I got to the point where I felt like I didn't want to run. I didn't want to run the business part of it. What I wanted to do was like teach and do development. I think people have drawn their dots. This is pretty good. We've got mostly California people. Um, so I kind of changed up my life a little bit while I was living in Oregon. I started graduate school and conducting, so I was learning how to conduct choirs, and it was absolutely incredible to be back in college with all the younger students and being older than the professors and becoming good friends with all of them. That was super fun. So then I actually cut down my hours at work in order to do that. And then, um, yeah, I'm not exactly sure how all the other stuff happened, but I got married, one of those COVID weddings, and my wife and I took our honeymoon, and we went all over Europe, all through Greece and Turkey and um, other places in Europe, and we just kind of decided that life seemed better here. So we took a couple more trips to kind of explore what it was like in the area. I'm going to stop this share thing. And and we tried to find a place where we felt at home. And so when we were driving around Crete, which is where we live now, the southernmost part of Europe, there's one small island just to the south of us that's technically the southern point of Europe. It just really felt like home. Like this one particular village just really welcomed us, and we just really, really felt great there. So we decided to do something crazy and pull up stakes and move. And so at the
Wow.
time, I think I was definitely still working. I wasn't thinking about retiring then. I was basically deciding what I was going to do next um, with my life, with my time. I was bouncing around a few different ideas um, of what I was going to do. I had actually, let's take a look at this here. This is where I live, right? Rustica is where I am right now. This little teeny tiny village. Um, and it's about a 25-minute drive from the Mediterranean. And then
Wow.
uh, this is Rethymno, which is a kind of a city size. It's the third largest city in the of Crete, and Crete is the fifth largest island in the Mediterranean,
Do you know the population of Crete in its entirety?
around 600,000.
Okay.
Yeah, it's about like 6 or 7 hours to drive from end to end.
Wow.
Heraklion is the biggest city on the island. And if you might have heard of Knossos Palace, this is the Minoan ruins, King Minoas. And the oldest road in the world is here. And
Wow.
this is a really, really amazing place to tour. When I first moved here, we lived really close to that. I drove right by it every day. Drove right by this Roman aqueduct every day. Uh, you're seeing this
Mm.
thing that was built, you know, in like 300 AD and survived
Yeah.
all the earthquakes, and people still walk across it. The history I can't even believe. I can't even fathom stuff like that. That's happening here. Um,
Did it, I mean, this is just kind of a side question, but did it take a lot of courage to say, hey, we're going to move to this totally different part of the world, change of pace, everything is different. I imagine that you don't have the same kind of, um, for lack of a better word, luxuries that we have, here in the States. What,
no, yeah, definitely, it did take courage for sure. It seemed pretty natural. But I guess the things that took courage is selling everything that I owned, right? Selling all my hi-fi gear, all of my guitars. I had 30 guitars sold. Yeah,
wow. So
yeah,
I have something to look forward to then.
yeah, one at a
I'm
time.
on my
And then
way.
this is how many guitars I have now. One, and it was even a
Wish
ghost
we
of
would have met
guitar.
earlier. I might have bought a few off of you.
Yeah. Well, a couple of them I've actually loaned to people in Oregon. I'll probably get them back someday. So really, there's sort of two things that were a big part of it. One of them was just pulling up stakes and leaving the U.S. and really kind of adopting a totally different culture. Greek is really hard to learn, and it turns out the farther south you go in Europe, the less English is spoken. And I told you this is the most southern part. So in our village where we live, nobody speaks fluent English. And our Greek is okay, but it's definitely not to the point where we can have a conversation with people here yet. But we study Greek every day. Um, but in the cities, like in Rethymno, there's a lot of people who do all the people with the shops, and so there's a lot of that. The thing that I love most about it is actually the lack of all those things that you mentioned, all the niceties. There are no Thai restaurants. There's Amazon takes a month to deliver, not a day, let alone same day. And there is no Amazon in Greece. It's Amazon Germany. And so I think I've ordered 4 or 5 things in the last 3 years from Amazon because we moved here 3 years ago. And that makes my life a lot better. you know, uh, Grocery stores don't have anywhere near as much stuff. And I'm not bragging about anything, weight loss, whatever, but just moving here and changing nothing else about my life, I lost 30 pounds, and then it just stayed off.
Wow.
Um, that definitely was nice.
That's interesting. Do you think that's just because of the type of the food, the change in the quality of the food, or what do you attribute that to?
I think it's because there's less stuff available, you kind of have to cook at home more. And olive oil is uh, I have a million stories. Crete is like the highest per capita consumer of olive oil in the world. Um, a typical family goes through 5 gallons a year. So we actually buy a 5 gallon big plastic gasoline thing of olive oil, and we've actually filled it a couple times already. So a lot more of the healthy things and a lot less of the unhealthy things, I think, is basically what it is.
I don't know if I could live without In and Out though. That would be the
Yeah,
deal breaker.
I
I'm
don't
just
really miss
teasing.
that. There's no U.S. chains of any kind here. There's actually 3 McDonald's on the entire island, and 2 of them are closed in winter. So there's only one, and there's no other fast food chains of any kind from the U.S. There's one Greek one, but and the Greek fast food chain, you can get fresh squeezed orange juice that they make right there. They just put oranges into a machine, and it's like ridiculously good, and probably €2 or something. Um, so it's very different than what you think of as fast food. Um, so the complete lack of income inequality here. There are no Lamborghinis or Ferraris. There's no car here at all to make you jealous at all. Everybody drives the same old diesel, whatever. That's what we drive. Um, there's there's high unemployment, but there's no homelessness. There's no drug use. There's almost no crime. Um, Everybody's just seems to be happily hanging out, uh, drinking coffee and enjoying their life, and also wondering why the hell anybody would move from America to Crete because it's poor here and they can't make a living, because also the wages are low. Um, so, yeah,
So
they love their life. They feel really happy that other people would actually see that that someone would want to live here with no ties to Greece at all. That's pretty unusual, I think.
would you say that the success you had with your FileMaker businesses enabled you to make this move, or could anybody kind of, just decide to make this move?
Well, one of the things that you have to do to figure out is the visa. You have to be able to get that. The most valuable thing that I own by far is my European residence card, which gives me the ability to never have to leave, never have to go to the US again. So I have permanent residency in Greece, which is tied to um, a thing called the Golden Visa, which is actually much harder to do now than it was. And that was tied to being able to buy real estate with cash, which absolutely was tied to the success of my FileMaker business. There are other ways to do that now. And actually, one of the reasons we chose Greece was it was the cheapest one. A lot of other
Mm.
countries like Spain and Portugal were 500,000, and Greece's was much lower than that. Um, uh, so, so yeah, from that standpoint. However, there are a lot of other types of visas you can get, and you could move to a place. Um, there's a financially independent visa where you just have to have a pretty moderate, basically like a regular old U.S. Social Security income, or a 401k with a certain balance, and that gives you long-term residence. Um, I think many other countries will have the same thing. Also, if you have any ties in your family, a lot of countries will, like if your father was born in Italy or Germany or Austria or whatever, some of those countries will actually grant you citizenship based on that. So the birthright citizenship is not the common thing here. Um,
Mm.
so let's see. Yeah, one of my
And
friends
neither.
here,
Go ahead.
her daughter, there's a Greek. She was with a Greek man and had a daughter with him, and so but the daughter wasn't born here, and she's going to be able to get Greek citizenship just because of her father being a Greek citizen. So, which wouldn't happen in the U.S., for example. I don't think. Anyway, continue.
Yeah, actually, I'm in the process of getting a dual citizenship with Mexico because my grandparents were Mexican citizens, and so then my dad became a Mexican citizen, and then now I'm in the process. And so even though my dad or I were not born there, um, we
Hmm.
can because of that, I can get it, and even my kids can get it. So,
Nice.
uh,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
kind of
Every
nice.
country has their own rules. So if you're thinking about it,
Yeah.
even if you're not thinking about moving and you're thinking about whether or not you want to have some options for travel or whatever later on, if you can get a second passport, I highly recommend it. We're going to become hopefully Greek citizens. That process is Byzantine, a local Greek term, um, and you have to live here for 7 years, and you have to pass the test. You have to speak pretty fluent Greek, and be able to talk about Greek mythology in Greek. And I'm not close to that yet, but I have 5 more years.
Awesome. Well, let me ask you a little bit more about your work life and your business life. So now that you've sold, you've moved to Greece. Before you were working with teams, and now you're working on your own, but you have the internet to connect you with everybody like you are now. How would you compare life somewhere else, working on your own relative to what it was like working with a team of people? Do you miss it? Are there advantage? What are the pros and cons of that?
I definitely miss it and living my life on Zoom. Most of what I do now is teach, right? So my company, the company that I chose to throw myself into is Navarre Training, my training company. And all I do is online personal Zoom teaching. So I don't make videos and sell them because there's a couple of other companies that do that phenomenally well. Um, but there's not really other companies who have like a boot camp class and can work with any other partner. So any Claris partner can send me an employee or a customer to train. And because I don't directly do consulting, I'm not gonna compete with any partner. So that's kind of my business model. It turned out to be a little tough though to convince partners to have me train their people, even though I firmly believe I'm a better trainer than virtually any trainer on staff at any partner, because it's all I do. All I do is keep my curriculum up to date, study neuroscience, use all the stuff I learned in my master's program, go back on my long FileMaker career, and take it dead serious about being the best teacher I can. And I love working with my students. Um, that has actually turned out to kind of pay off working um, with internal developers at companies who sort of find me on LinkedIn.
Hmm.
Um, so but there's not
So,
enough of those. It's hard. It's
but
hard to find people.
you have more, it sounds like you have more in-house developers than you have developers at actual FileMaker shops.
It changes from time to time, but yes, right now. Yeah. So my
Interesting.
class I'm teaching right now has about 20 students in it. It just started on Monday. A lot of them are Apple Developer Academy people. A lot of them are people who have paid for my class before and taken it. So a lot of people repeat it, you can take it, repeat it for free. And then there's all the new people in this one are internal developers. But some of the classes I taught, well, like for example, productive computing has sent me several other people to train. So I've trained their new hires, uh, and a couple of other companies that I have good relationships with that have sent me all of their new hires to train. Um, and then there's a certification program. So that's kind of my business model for training, and but it's not enough. I'm not getting enough people to train, so I'm also doing so for some of the people who are coming to me who are in-house developers who need help with coding, then I'm doing kind of one-on-one training with them. I don't really do coding where I have to sit in the dark and write. It doesn't get my just doesn't get me excited. But what I love to do is pair programming, where I'm working with someone at an internal, any developer at any level, working on their actual solution together at whatever level of FileMaker, building it. I'll go at whatever speed to as fast as I can go to build things, and teaching them everything that I do that we're doing together as we go. That's totally my jam. I love that.
So you mentioned, you have a significant number of young students. How are they perceiving FileMaker relative to, all the other development options, low code to pro code?
This is going to come up a lot in the session that I have with you in 2 months. Um, they kind of don't necessarily know what to think of it, um, because it's so different than a lot of other environments out there. But then I think they see like the accessibility of the script engine and all the things that you can do with it. Virtually none of them are super impressed with the FileMaker design surface and like what you can do with the layout. Although they really like how fast you can do it and that it's completely the same on Mac, Windows, and web and iOS. That's definitely pretty cool. But they are pretty impressed by a lot of the stuff you can do with server, all the different ways you can connect, OData, API connections. Um,
Do they tend to have like a background in other development processes, like web development
yeah,
or something?
all of them, all of the people in the Apple Developer Academy are Swift programmers and have also
Oh,
chops
wow.
in other languages. And then all the other younger people who have come to me, it's the same thing. I've gotten developers from many different places in the world, actually. Uh, Africa, Middle East, other places in Europe. Many of them are younger, maybe 30, not, 20s, but that's the hardest people to get, the people in their 20s. However, a lot of the partners are hiring them, right? Productive computing frequently hires people in that age range. By the way, as we're going, if anybody else has a question or something to throw in, as long as it's not going to take us too far off track, please throw in a comment.
Yeah, by all means. So I will change the subject here a little bit. You mentioned before that your ADHD played a key role in your journey, and you thought that there was some relevance to that. Could you talk a little bit about about how that affected your career span, and also, if that had any impact on you making this decision to move to someplace that's a little bit more low key?
I would say yes, absolutely. So for those who know me and have known me for a long time, I will apologize for having been unmedicated and for most of the ADHD that I had from when I was a kid. It definitely made me difficult to work with at times, and I see that pretty clearly now. So, and I probably still am. Uh, it didn't really have much of an impact on maybe why I chose to move here, but it had a really big effect on what I chose to do for work. So, with my flavor of ADHD, if I'm teaching or pair programming, I don't have ADHD. It's just the symptoms are just gone, and I'm thrilled to be doing what I'm doing and fully engaged, and nothing falls through the cracks. So basically, all like a normal brain would function is that's what happens when I'm teaching. And so at the end of teaching, I'm kind of revved up as opposed to burned out. Um, and so I chose to try to find a business in that area so that my work would be more enjoyable in this phase. And I was hoping that it would be, full time or close to full time. And I still would hope that. So the semi-retired part that I'm at right now is not entirely by choice. I
So,
would like
but
more
so
work.
if there is somebody who is kind of in that season, though, do you have any advice that you might give somebody who's kind of considering something similar, maybe a transition in the way that they're working, or just fully retiring?
Hmm.
Any thoughts about, your decision-making process there, or some insights that you might have gained?
I'd have to probably get some other kind of follow-ups to that. It's so
You have a poll, right? A poll about who might
yeah.
be doing that. Why don't you throw that up? It'd be interesting to see how many people are, considering that.
Polls, quizzes. You would think that that would. Oh, here we go. Back. What's next for you? Launch. Yeah, so this is something I just thought of earlier today, my time, to put together to see kind of what people are thinking about. Uh, let's see. I would say, a lot of people, I think like half the people in the US don't have retirement accounts. And
Hmm.
that makes it really, really hard because you basically have to wait until you have enough Social Security or whatever to have money. And uh, I was really fortunate that I had someone give me good financial advice when I was 25. It was not my parents, which was to basically start saving some money when at that age. So I started early and then just didn't watch it. Um, and so I consider myself very fortunate that I didn't have any kind of medical emergency that would have depleted that, and that it just kind of grew naturally over time. It's not a ton of money. It's not, you know, it's not like buy a Greek island or anything like that.
Hmm.
Um, but it will be enough when I'm 67 to have that in Social Security to be able to have, to have no risk of running out of money. I think in Greece is basically what we're aiming for. Um,
And if you were, if you had stayed in the United States, I imagine your decision making would have been totally different. You
it's
wouldn't be able to
definitely
do the
not
same.
enough to have stayed in the United States, let alone like Portland. We
So
were
you would
paying.
have had to continue to work. You wouldn't have been able to make this kind of decision.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, our rent was 2,600 a month for like a one bedroom apartment in downtown Portland. I'm sure it's more now, plus all the other expenses. You can rent a place here for 800. They're hard to find, but it's a completely different thing. Like a nice big house.
Right. So this is interesting on the poll. I'm seeing, I'll go ahead and end the poll right now. But it looks like 81% of people are within, there's 37 that are within 1 to 7 years. And then there are 44% that are more than seven. Um, but maybe
Hmm.
it seems like and then there's another seven that are already retired or semi-retired. So this is something that's been on my mind personally for a while, and that's that we're in this phase of the baby boomer kind of cohort and transition where there's a huge wave of baby boomers that are looking at retirement right now. And I've seen this term kind of floated around called the silver tsunami, where there's just this huge tsunami of business owners that are approaching retirement age, and they're about to either, consider or put their businesses up for sale, but there may not be enough people who are out there ready to buy these businesses, right? So
Yep.
this is something I've been considering because I'm in a position that I may be able to take advantage of the silver tsunami. So it's interesting to see that there are a significant number of FileMaker community members here with us that are kind of looking at that. And I think that this is
Yeah.
an important conversation. FileMaker is at a particular crossroads also. I don't know if you would agree with me or not, but did the poll show? It looks like people are saying to show the poll, and I did press the button to show the poll.
Oh,
True or
maybe I can
false?
click share report.
It blurred for just 2 or 3 seconds.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think it should be showing now. I'm kind of shocked to see like a third of people, more than a third of people, 38%, have thought about moving to another country uh, often. And another 38%, a little. That's like most of the people in the room have thought about moving to another country.
I'm guessing it's going to be quite recently,
Yeah, maybe.
like in the last 8 months.
Yeah. Uh,
I think this number two also is really interesting because you know the fact that 73% of people are doing exactly the work they want and they're happy to keep doing it is a testament to
I like
FileMaker.
that.
We love FileMaker. I love FileMaker,
Yeah.
and I would love to see it continue to thrive. So, but there's also the reality that some people are just ready to make a change. If you've been doing it for 40 years, like you had been doing it, I can understand that, it would be nice to be able to do the kind of work that you're doing, and that you're loving, but there's also, a time when you might consider, well, what else can I
I don't I
can I
don't have a plan to
experience?
stop working.
I
As long as I
answered
can
that
do what I
question.
do. I,
I answered that question no, for the reason that I don't want to leave FileMaker, but I'd like to transition into um, a, a role where I'm doing more project management than run coding.
hmm.
So maybe people are thinking different areas of FileMaker or, training like you did, Matt.
And I love coding. Like I spent a bunch of today uh, doing a bunch of AI research and testing and play on a database that I wrote to learn Greek. And it was so fun to like make AI calls to conjugate verbs and put them in my study database and to see how amazing that works. And to kind of just get my brain going around what are the things that we can do as FileMaker developers? There's fundamental changes that have happened, and absolutely, completely fundamental changes have happened with the AI integration into FileMaker. And I'm trying to change my approach to it entirely. So reporting is completely different now than it was. I'm not going to spend time anymore teaching people how to do layout mode script with or like a layout with a body and sub summaries and sorts and a regular old report that goes that way. Instead, I'm going to spend time teaching people how to write really good prompts, what the importance of system prompts are, how to personalize it, how to get the information so you can have a good, clean, HTML result, what to then do with that result, how to connect the different parts of AI together to make sense, how to, when embedding comes into play and whether, and there's a ton of things. That's what I'm really loving now. And I'm going to be teaching. So the class I'm doing, the AI class I'm starting at the end of October is going to be that. And I'm also teaching an AI class in person at the Engage U conference in Antwerp in November. I don't know, that was kind of a little bit of a aside. But I think the main thing there, to kind of go to your point of of what's next and when do I want to stop, though, that's the stuff that I want to do. Like the fact that I started developing in 1983 when I graduated high school, I turned 60 this year, before FileMaker even came out, before the Mac even came out. I was doing work on DOS databases, and so, but that doesn't matter to me anywhere near as much as what I've spent time learning in the last 6 months.
Yeah. I was going to ask you about that. So, with this change, do you feel like you're able to get ahead of the game in AI because you have more freedom and more time than you would have if you were, stuck with clients working on specific projects? Because, I've been thinking about that a lot too. There's this AI wave. It's another wave that I want to get in front of and not miss.
Yeah.
But as an in-house developer, I'm so busy
Yep.
you working at work that I don't have the freedom to do that as much as I'd like to. So I was wondering, what kind of freedom has this afforded you, and are you able to take advantage of that, with this AI wave?
I would say it has afforded me a ton of freedom to do that because um, given having the time from a couple different ways. One, my work schedule is shifted, right? I basically do whatever I want to do from when I get up in the morning and walk the dogs at 7 until 2 or so when the West Coast opens up, and then end my day at around 8 or 9 o'clock at night. Uh, but I've got all that other time to work, right? So I've got my work day. And then also not having quite enough work right now. But then also the expectation of teaching. Students are going to expect to learn AI. And
Yeah.
I didn't know anything about it a few years ago. Like a lot of people had done a lot of work with machine learning and things like that. And when those things got into FileMaker 10 years ago, I didn't know anything about it. So I started and kind of decided to do something crazy, which was to start a podcast with Chris Hippolyte focusing on AI integration with FileMaker. He did start 10, 15 years ago with AI. I knew a lot about it. So I thought, okay, I'll, do that, forcing myself to then learn a lot. And there's so many people who know so much more about it than me. I mean, I'm never going to catch up to what Chris and Heidi learned about AI 4 years ago. Maybe one day I'll catch up to where they were 2 years ago. I don't know. And there's a lot of other people in the community who are just who I bow down to. Um, yeah, on this call, if several, right? Um, Michael Wallace. Oh my God, if you want to talk AI, yeah. Um, anyway, so the
But
freedom, yeah, go ahead.
so that leads me to a question that's kind of a side question here. I think I get the sense that there are a lot of people who are kind of just don't even want to get involved with AI because it's overwhelming. There's too much to learn. They don't understand it. They're already at a point where they know what they know and they don't want to use it. Do you feel like
Come to my
it's been
class.
a difficult road to learn?
Yes.
I know so that's interesting.
So
And do you
most of what I'm doing is I'm spending a lot of time learning AI and trying a bunch of things and then coming up with ways to teach it to make it as easy as possible for a FileMaker developer to learn and use. And then to kind of teach the stuff that I spend a bunch of time on and to try to save you time. There's a level at which you're going to have to make mistakes and do stuff,
right.
but that's what I'm really trying to do is come up with use cases and integration because I have spent uh, many hours in the last month or so trying to integrate certain things that just aren't working for whatever reason and not figuring it out or like taking a different path or whatever.
But there are things you have figured out, it sounds like,
Yeah.
because you're
Oh
able
yeah.
to
Yeah.
teach them. Yeah. So you guys heard it here first. If you need AI training, come ask Matt. So I'm actually really excited about teaching you some of the stuff that I've gotten into on how to integrate a web front end with FileMaker using AI. So we'll get into that, in a couple months. But yeah, you're right. There's just so much to learn, and FileMaker is approaching it from so many different angles, and we'll hear more about some of that today with Rick. I'm super excited to hear, some of the new stuff. I haven't even had a chance to kind of enter into that world yet, so that's going to be pretty exciting.
Dave Knight, what you got?
Yeah,
I
go
have a
ahead,
quick
Dave.
question. I have a quick question, Matt. Having seen you present, having seen you train over the years and so forth, you've always done a really good job. Kind of, you just described your process. I learn it, I kind of play with it, I break it, I find a clean path, and then I construct curriculum to help kind of lessen the blow for other people coming behind me, right? You've always done a really good job and effective at that. My question is, I'm hearing you also go, gee, I'm not quite as busy as I'd like to be. My question is, have you ever looked into other pools of technology and go, I'm a technologist. I've learned FileMaker. I'm pretty effective at training others on that. I could also do the same with React or with Node or with other AI platforms or things of that nature. Have you ever thought about adding kind of additional spokes to your wheel other than just the FileMaker thing? Because it
It
sounds
seems,
like you're not as busy as you could be.
well, it seems terrifying to like throw myself into something that I'm not an expert in at all, and uh, so all these other platforms that I really should have been gaining expertise in through the other companies that I ran, I had people to do that, and that was dumb. I should have actually really put the effort in uh, to kind of learn those things then. But now when I do it, it's kind of vibe coding, right? I've actually used AI to write some pretty cool Perl programs and they just kind of run and work. It's crazy, right? But that doesn't, I don't think I have the expertise at all. I would feel very, very much um, not up to the task of being able to teach uh, on platforms other than FileMaker. So I think I've just kind of chosen to do that. And if I don't have enough time, I think I mentioned earlier that it's a 22-minute drive to the Mediterranean. There's a really, really nice beach. Uh, you just kind of go down there and you grab a place to sit and like an umbrella, and they bring you a menu. You can get a club sandwich for €3 and a beer for €2. Um, I did zip
How much is
earlier.
a bottle of water?
Oh, 50 cents.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I thought you were going to say 10 euros.
No, maybe less actually. Yeah. Uh, yeah. Water is insanely cheap here. I am in Crete. I'm in kind of the dead center of the island of Crete. Steve asked.
Yeah. So you were mentioning, you know, in response to Dave that you're concerned about learning, but this is like, kind of your specialty, isn't it? You know, you learn something new and then you teach it. Is it because you feel like it would take too long to learn? Is it because you don't feel that your uh, coding skills would transfer over, or
Yeah, I
what's
think
kind
it's
of
some of that. I think I just honestly have no sense of what the demand would be for someone to do training on another platform.
mm,
Whereas I kind of know the FileMaker platform. I mean,
sure,
you know,
yeah.
with, I have very, very high confidence in the FileMaker platform. I teach, I know exactly what to not use and what to use. And I have a lot of, the methods I use to teach those things about which tools to take out of your toolbox. I would have really no idea of best practices in any other platform. So I think for now, I've basically decided is if there's a way that I can continue working with FileMaker and doing whatever I can to help the community uh, and have fun while doing it, that's what I'm going to do. And whether that's going to be like if the training company, 2 or 3 years from now, is just there's not any demand for it, and actually demand is increasing right now. Um, then I have some other ideas, right? Like start a FileMaker-based vertical market or some other kind of a thing that takes advantage of the stuff that I know and love and can earn some income.
And when you decided, how many years ago was it that you actually sold your businesses? It was like around 5 or so?
Well, let's see. I think AppWorks was about 5 years ago that I sold that, and it was a multi-year kind of a payout. By the way, if you own a consulting company and it makes any difference to the success of the company, whether you show up to work or not, then the value of your company is zero. If you own a consulting company and everything is processed and like you have a system and if you have staff who run things, then your company is worth something. But it's not worth a multiplier of your sales. It's worth some fraction of your sales. And there are a few companies who are buying FileMaker consulting companies. Not a ton, but anyway, Direct Impact was one. And they made me an offer for AppWorks at right the time that I feel that I really felt strongly like my expiration date had come, and I wanted to try something else. So anyway,
Can you go into more details about the acquisition process? Like, what does that look like? You've talked about multipliers. Some people might not really, understand what that means. Can you just kind of give us some insights
so
into the acquisition
so
process?
if you own a company that makes a widget like I don't know, really good water bottles or something like that, maybe not like a huge one, and your sales are 1 million a year of whatever that thing is, and you have relationships with manufacturers and you have staff in place and whatnot, and you want to sell your company, you can sell it for some multiplier, 3 times, 5 times, 10 times, depending upon the demand. You'll get 10 million, and if it's a really hot commodity, you can get a large multiplier of it. A service-based development shop is not worth a multiplier of its sales. So
Is there a particular reason, or is that just
yeah,
part of
no
your
one will buy it
thinking?
for that, basically. So if you can find someone who will buy your $1 million company for 20 million, great. But there's really not a way they can't take your magic of what you've done with the company and your process and just put a bunch more developers in and then increase the sales to the point where they can make that 20 million back. Um, Whereas if you have a company that makes something really cool and someone else can take over that company who has even better connections and financing and whatever, they can actually multiply that out. So it is worth that money. And so it's basically what your company is worth is what someone's actually going to buy it for. That's the only valuation that matters. I guess there's my advice on that, right? Uh,
So did your company have consistent long-term clients, or was it just kind of like this client is here for, the allotted time that they are needed for their project and then they're gone and then you have to drum up new clients? Because I think it seems like there would be a difference in the valuation of your company if you had, $1
Big
million
time.
coming in annually from the same clients for the past 10 years.
Yeah,
And
big
that was
time.
right.
So we had large contracts with a couple of very large clients that were, hundreds of thousands a year, and several years left on it, right? on the contract. So basically, that alone was actually worth something. And that's a little bit hard thing to get. I imagine some of the people who in the room who own partner companies definitely have that religion and have contracts like that. And if you do, then that will allow you to potentially sell your company, sell it to the employees, which I think would be great. I know that there's some pretty major FileMaker partner companies where the plan is to sell the company to the employees so that the owners can then retire or whatever, basically have their parachute. And those are other things I think that people should think about. You kind of asked me what things to think about there. Another one, I'm kind of bouncing around, but the psychology of it, I didn't realize the psychological things that would happen when you sell your company. And so when I sold it 5 years ago, there was a pretty rough transition of being the top dog owning a company to like no one, yeah, I wasn't prepared for that. So I think that's something you should think about. Like when you're going to make a big change, have a long conversation with ChatGPT about what that's going to look like. That was supposed to be a joke. Yeah. I can't see anybody's face. I have no idea if my jokes are landing.
No, I
So
think
there's a couple of questions for you in the chat. I don't know if you can see the chat.
Haven't. Am I using Starlink internet? I am using satellite internet. You're not supposed to say whether you're using Starlink or not because it's like a charge thing. But if I was using Starlink, and I am, it's insanely reliable and fast. I'm in the middle of nowhere and it basically never goes down. And it's 40 euros a month. I don't know why it's so cheap, but it's 40 euros a month.
wow, that's good to know. That's interesting.
And they changed the price of Starlink based on where you are in the world. And there's actually some other providers, and Starlink speeds have actually gone down lately. So it used to be like 300 megabit. Now it's more like 1. But it's pretty good. The latency is what kills me. Like having a FileMaker server, a cloud server. The closest AWS data center is Frankfurt, Germany, which is 1,000 kilometers away, and that's where my server is. And the lag time there is hard. And I'll tell you what, I'm a really good WAN developer because I only do development on hosted databases, and I don't like waiting. So I've teach a lot of methods to make your database really fast in situations where you have high latency like that. Because anyway, that's one of my other things is to always do development on hosted databases with large sample data sets. Do nothing locally and do nothing with 5 records. I'm opinionated.
Yeah, that's good. That's good wisdom. So that'll be the wisdom nugget for the day. So going back to the acquisition thing, how did you find the company that ended up acquiring
Direct
AppWorks?
Impact.
Was it
I think they found me. I think.
so they came to you?
Yeah, they were at the time. I'm not sure what they're doing now, but they were reaching out and contacting partners at a lot of companies to sort of test the waters and to see if they were interested in selling the company.
And were there certain things about the way that your company was set up that you could encourage other people if they're looking to do the same thing? These are the things that made my company attractive to a suitor.
Yeah,
What are
absolutely. And it's really so. My business partner, the Kim, who ran my company, is the reason why that company had good value because she set all the processes in place. She didn't have ADHD. She had other genius, and so she basically converted all of the disorganized stuff into everyone having a contract, which was in a folder and was signed correctly, and and so everything was a system. When we got a new customer, a new lead, we put the record in the groove and had a really organized way to do it. Hosting contract, consulting contract, really clear staff, a project management, very clear. And so that allowed me to go to grad school and not be that involved in the company, and it didn't have effect on anything. Because I was at the time I was doing things that were more fun for me, right? I was teaching classes and doing some of the higher end development, and doing doing a lot of the work on the projects that I really wanted to work on. But there were clients who we would get who I had never met and would spend a lot of money with us. So they would come in through that process. So I would say if you're trying to get to that point eventually, that's how you should do it. That's what you should try to do.
Right. Did you ever read a book called The E-Myth?
I think so, a long
The
time
E,
ago.
the E-Myth is
Yeah.
it's basically the entrepreneurial myth, and it's this idea that if you have a certain skill, let's say you're a baker, then the myth is that you think that you can just start a company because you have that skill. But
Yeah, I did read
entrepreneurship
that book.
itself
Yeah.
is a skill, and creating those systems is kind of what creates good entrepreneurship. So there's if anybody's interested in the I guess the philosophy of setting up that kind of system for your business to be acquirable, that's definitely a good book to check out. And this that's
Can I
kind of
just make
funny.
a couple of comments before we close?
Absolutely.
Because we're coming up to time.
Yeah.
Matt, thanks very much for your description. It was good to know some of the background. A couple of comments that were made in the past hour. I agree that sometimes it's difficult to know how to transition away from coding, and there is a kind of a compulsion to think about other aspects. And moving into
Mhm.
project management was the answer to me, because that very often is the weak point as things move forward. And the only other thing is I'm menteeing or I'm mentoring two mentees from the Apple Academy in association with Claris. And I am absolutely incredibly impressed by these relatively young professionals who have taken Swift on board, who have started their second year into the Renaissance second year program and taking on Python, who have developed as part of their projects mobile applications. They're absolutely amazing and inspiring, and I'm privileged to be their mentor. That's
Thank
all.
you. Anybody else want to have a question here before we wrap up with Matt?
Yeah, and I threw one book in there. I'm gonna have my one book recommendation is a book called Outlive. Read it. Yeah, I read it recently, and everyone should be reading that book.
What's
Thank
kind of the general
It's
background?
basically it's a health book. It's basically about how to be strong and have a good life at age 100, as opposed to just how to live long and not be healthy. So anyway, a lot of good science. So,
Hey,
but
Matt,
that's a detour. I think I brought that up only because someone said the word book. And you know what?
John,
Earlier I said Perl, and I totally meant Python. Sorry about that. It was Python.
John, are those Focal speakers in the background?
yes.
Wow. I'd love to talk to you about that later. Go ahead. What's your question, John?
I had it in the chat, but it's gotten buried, and I totally understand if you're not comfortable doing it, but I'd love to see your background turned off and the camera pointed out the window, just to have a sense of where you are. It seems so important what you're talking about. But if
I'm in a basement office. I'm a programmer, so I'm in a basement, and the room behind me is a mess. So
I retract the request.
I'm in this space, but I guess I could maybe share some photos or something. Yeah,
Sure.
it is absolutely incredible here. It's hard to even describe it. Yeah, by the way, we're building a house. Our house project just started about a month ago. What pictures can I show? I don't know, maybe a couple here. I don't have anything kind of ready, and you definitely don't want to like open up your iPhoto in front of random people or whatever, right? So that's not what I wanted to show. Okay. Near the end of our street, there's like a little river, and there's just this little park, and there's like a little weird bridge to nowhere. So this is like a short walk. This is basically from our house right now. So these are all olive groves, and just over here is the Mediterranean. You kind of can't see it.
Is
So
the
these are just
climate
some,
similar to like California?
pardon?
Is the climate kind of similar to California?
Yeah, today was 88, and it's not going to have any clouds this week. The temperatures are going to go down to around 82, and yeah, so summer is in. You can ride your bike really, really nicely until around November, and then we get a really proper winter. It'll even snow in the higher elevation, and but it won't stick. And then it gets really nice again starting at around March. So like March to October, the weather's pretty fabulous. Oh yeah, this is
Wow.
like 1,000-year-old olive tree built in the middle of some wall or something. Uh, oh yeah, this is some out on a bike ride, some just really old building on a hill, and I just thought it was charming.
Do people still use that building or is it abandoned?
Yeah, so a lot of the villages, people don't live in the houses anymore. So a lot of the villages are partly not people there, but then people do live here. And then also people live in places where they just come in for part of the year. So they don't live there the whole time. Yeah. So, okay, here's when you're driving around, you see a ton of villages like this. For no reason you can determine, in the middle of a hill, there's a village with a bunch of people living there. So presumably 1,500 years ago, there was a spring, and because there was water, people put a village. There's hundreds like this all over Crete, including the one that we're living in, which is called Medonas, where we're building.
Hey, Matt, you said a second ago that people don't live in the villages much, and they kind of look like Mediterranean ghost towns.
Some of
Why
them.
did they move out?
Young people can't make a living here. So there's kind of an exodus, and then a lot of people do move to the larger cities. So lots and lots of people from Crete move to Athens or to the US. So like if you're, the salary that you can make in the US seems really attractive, and they don't really think about necessarily what the cost of living is there and health insurance and whatnot. I think one other big factor that I probably should have mentioned at the very beginning is my wife and I, we decided we did not want to get old in the US. We looked for where in the world would be the best place to get old. What culture values people as they age, and where they can be 90 and healthy and walk around, and man, it's Crete, it's Greece. It's definitely a really big one for that. Um, I could talk for so long about this stuff. The health insurance or the health system is vastly better here. I can't even believe, and I would be surprised to say, because I mean, it's not a rich country. Anyway, I want to kind of move on to the next stuff because I definitely want to hear.
Eric Matthews has a question about do you guys have a lot of fires there? Any fires?
Not any close. So let's like there are some fires, but none of them have been anywhere near us. Um, so we haven't been threatened by that. There's earthquakes too, but they haven't been that big of a thing so far.
So it is actually past the 11 o'clock a.m. hour, and I think it's time for the Tech News Roundup from Chris Moyer. Matt, very much appreciate you taking the time to, have a different kind of conversation in the FileMaker community with us today, and I look forward to our next one and many more. But
Thank you, Matt, for sharing those pictures. It really means a lot.
There's no good ones of the sea, but I've got those ones too. And if anybody wants to reach out and have a conversation at much more depth about this, who's considering moving, shoot me an email, matt@navarre.training.
Will you put that in the chat? Matt at
No,
Navarre
I will not.
training. To your own detriment. All right. Well, thanks, Matt. Let's see. I haven't done this before, so I'm not sure how to turn it over to Chris. Chris, do you have this expertise?
I will just start sharing.
Excellent.
Thanks everyone for listening to me rattle on.
Thank you, Matt.
Here we go. Can everybody see my screen?
Yep. Looks good.
Excellent. Let's go. So this is the September 2025 edition of the Tech News Roundup. We will just jump right into it here. I am going to start off with Google. we alluded to this a little bit last week, but in Google's, there's a divergence between what Google's PR people is saying and then what they say under oath in court. And so the PR people are saying, oh, the web's doing great, everything's perfect, and SEO is dying. For those of you who haven't heard this, a ton of referrals, starting over mostly the last year, have started coming from AI generated content. So, if you've typed a Google search lately, you've probably seen the AI generated answers. And so those are trumping regular search engine ranking. And but they had to do a court file
and to refresh and modernize the interface there. Things like fonts and padding and iconography and those sort of things. When you first launch FileMaker Pro, the screen that comes up, the start screen, has been enhanced. Table view is another thing that's been enhanced, and that's just the first part. And we'll be going on to into the inspectors as we continue to evolve this. And it'll probably eventually come back around and hit the Windows side as well. But we're starting on the Mac side. And then here's a developer quality of life enhancements we made that, frankly, should have been there from the beginning, 25, 30, 40 years ago, if you're Matt, which is the ability to add or remove objects from a group without having to blow up the group and then reconstitute the group. And some of these groupings can get, pretty complex, but the ability just to add one more thing or just remove something without having to do it all over. Something that people have been requesting as long as the 25 years I've been at Claris. Here's a real quick movie of the script folding, the collapsible parts. This is just sort of in layout mode, just sort of the look at the refresh. It's not radically different. Icons are cleaned up, spacing, fonts, and that sort of thing. If I had shown you the launch of FileMaker itself, you would see a different a view. And I could show you table view as well. There's been some nice enhancements there, but I'll just use a screenshot for now. And then here's the add and remove groups from object. You can see now there's in here you have group, ungroup, which you had before, and add to group, and you can just very straightforward in the interface now take care of that. Some new functions that we introduced in FileMaker 2025. Get record IDs from found set is the complement to the script I was just talking about that Vince had wrote a blog on. The combination of those two allow you to do some very interesting things now when you're building solutions that can potentially be much more performant and straightforward. Again, I encourage you to read Vince's blog. We've made enhancements we have a new function, JSON parse, and then you can get information about the parse state of the JSON, but we've done a lot of optimization of JSON. Anza, who does a lot of performance benchmarking after we launched stuff, came back and told us, this thing is radically faster than before. And of course, you know that JSON is becoming the workhorse about how you move data around in FileMaker. We're using it for Claris Connect. We're using it for AI. It is got a lot of versatility to it. So we've been spending the last several releases adding more and more power and capability to JSON. But this one we've succeeded in certain areas of what you're leveraging JSON for it to be radically more performant and necessary because all the uses that we're putting it to. There also in 2025, you may have noticed that we've had the ability for years using the Sparkle updater to get updates, and someone can just click and it'll download it. But we enabled the major versions to come down that way as well, and of course the developer can block that if they don't want that. One of the side effects of that, however, was prevented the ability for more than one version of FileMaker Pro on Windows, and that was a big problem. So, and the VREV I'll talk about in a second, we were able to address that so that you can get back to having multiple versions of FileMaker Pro on Windows. It was an unintended side effect that was just too problematic for a developer. If you're a developer, you're making a living, you know you've got multiple versions of FileMaker because you've got customers with multiple versions. And then we've made some enhancements, and we continue to make enhancements to the save as XML and the XML schema. We're at the very beginning of this. There's in the next update, there's some really you'll start to see some of the fruit of what we've been doing over the years as we get to the holy grail of being able to serialize and deserialize FileMaker solutions into XML, be able to patch them, be able to diff them, and that sort of thing. And one of the complexities here is XML isn't the best syntax in the world to diff, but it is a lot of what's underneath FileMaker is expressed in XML, and we've been going after that for a while. Then we come over to FileMaker Server 2025, and now runs on Ubuntu 24 and 2022. We've also continued on the server side to do improvements for JSON performance, how we're caching JSON, so it complements the other stuff I was talking about earlier. We have upgraded the tools, which are now can be installed as part of the FileMaker Server install. Those are the 3 command line tools that folks are using, have been there for a while. As we continue to improve those, now they can just be installed directly from the server install. And initially, that was when we first launched, that was the only way you can get them. But now I believe that we've made it available where you can go and through the community and your page and get access to those tools separately. And the reason that we had to package these up is because the operating systems are getting more and more strict on what they're allowing something like a command line to do, and they need to be signed and that sort of thing. So we had to package it a little bit differently. And then we've done a number of just across the board performance improvements on the server, from optimizing threads and memory management that helps with server stability as well. And then continuing on, that goes with improving being able to handle more concurrent thread pools on FileMaker Server, so that you're not, people aren't having to wait as long as before. We've gone into the admin console and the admin API and did some performance enhancement there as well, added the capability. Some of the techniques over time as we've been trying to more and more stabilize server, sometimes the cache would get full up, and people would have techniques like, hey, every night at midnight I'm going to reboot the server to clear out the cache, and that was a little bit heavy-handed. So we added an easy ability to just go into FAC and flush the cache, or to use the admin API for that. We've continued to make enhancements to our support for Let's Encrypt, expanding it to all the platforms, but also, and I'll show you a screenshot of this in a second, also the ability to fully configure it now through the server admin console. No longer do you need to set up a shell script and that sort of thing. You just set it up in the admin console, and it'll even renew itself. The only thing is, once the certificate renews, you do have to restart the server. We're working on subsequently in a coming update to even not have to do that. Restart a process, but not have to restart the entire server, to make that much more seamless, so that you can almost just set it and forget it. And so this is a screenshot of the FileMaker admin console, just showing you that the new capability for the hosted apps there, if you want to go in and flush the cache of one of your solutions or multiple of them, rather than having to restart the server. This is the interface in the admin console for Let's Encrypt, and you click on this request a Let's Encrypt certificate, and then it brings up this sort of wizard, if you will, that you fill this stuff out there, and then that's how you set up the automation through FAC no longer, like I said, having to do the shell script that was required before. And now let's go over to FileMaker Go. There's a number of things we did there. If you are using, an iPad and a keyboard, we now respect the same way you would expect on your laptop with FileMaker Pro. The arrow keys and space and enter for navigation. That's something that wasn't supported before. We now have a hover state support if you're using an Apple Pencil, let's say, or little known fact is that FileMaker Go will run on Vision OS in a Vision Pro. But one of the things is how do you know what you're staring at if you don't have hover? And was it that button or is it that field? So it comes in handy. There's sort of a side effect because there's not a ton of people that are using FileMaker Go with the Vision Pro devices. But it does have that effect as well. You can now manage FileMaker Go apps. They're now automatically put in the Files app of iOS, which is really nice. And then they automatically will show up in FileMaker Go, and I'll show you that in a second. And of course, we support the latest operating systems as well on Go. Differentiation, because the icons look the same, is FileMaker Go for 2025. We'll have a 25 underneath the right portion of the F. Here is a screenshot of now FileMaker Go has its own app folder in your Files app on your device. And then when you open it up, then you can see the files in that. And of course, if you launch FileMaker Go, all of those files are then available in that space as well. Going on to FileMaker WebDirect, a couple of nice quality of life enhancements. You can now right-click the context menu, and depending upon what kind of object you're in, it'll bring up the appropriate context menu, similar to what you would be doing on the desktop. For those of you who are familiar with because a lot of people don't know, is you can have a custom homepage for WebDirect that isn't the default, but it was sort of buried and hidden. Now there's a interface in the FileMaker admin console to be able to do that as well. And that way you can get the look and feel that you want of WebDirect if you just don't want the default that we give you. This one is a sleeper because everyone runs into this that deploys WebDirect is when a user clicks the back button, because that's what people do in browsers, and you lose your session, right? You're back to the home page. And this is just a simple affordance that when someone clicks the back button, that it warns them, are you sure that you would want to do this? Because this is what will happen. And then they can cancel out of that. And that prevents a lot of, the confusion of, I don't know what just happened to my data, or I was filling out a bunch of stuff and now it's all gone, that sort of thing. And then we've also done continuing to do some performance enhancements, making especially with multi-machine deployments, we were able to address some issues that made those less performant than they should be, and so that's there as well. A couple of screenshots. This is the right click for the context menu to come up in WebDirect. Here is the UI within the FileMaker Server admin console for being able to set up the custom home page. Before it was a file that was in a folder and you had to tweak it around, and now you can just go right through here to do that. And then here's the simple, I click the back button in WebDirect, and rather than just automatically taking me back to the home screen, it gives me an opportunity to say, oh, that's not what I intended. As far as APIs, the data API, session validation, we did some work there. It's hard to tell by here exactly what we did, but there's some enhancements there. The other thing I wanted to point out, although you can't directly make use of it yet, and yet is the operative term, is we do now support webhooks with the FileMaker OData API. Currently, we are using that with the integration I'll talk about in a second between FileMaker Pro 2025 and Clara Studio. But we do recognize the utility of a general capability of having webhooks in FileMaker. And so in a subsequent release, we will be adding that support as well, because there's a lot of utility in being able to use webhooks as part of FileMaker, especially in this API era that we're in. Then there's FileMaker Cloud. As you know, FileMaker Cloud usually comes a few months, a month or so, or a few months after we launch the major release, so that it will support that. We typically wait for the first BREV to get out, and it takes us a while to go through and get the approvals, because this is something that's being monitored and hosted with our friends at Apple. So it's got a lot of scrutiny. And the other thing is, and I'll cover that other thing in a second, that is having this take a little bit longer than we would like to, but essentially FileMaker Cloud 2025 will support all of the new capabilities that are available in the on-premise platform. The only exception is that it will not support the AI server portion that I showed in the new tab in FileMaker Server, because essentially that is another completely separate server that is essentially gives you the ability to run your own models, and it's something that it's just not going to be supported, at least now, from the team that monitors the security and the uptime and all of that. Is just not possible. We've had some other major, or not major, but some other tweaks about supporting local time zones and schedule maintenance, things like extending the ability to prolong the timeout to 180 minutes for WebD. So, you get people that were in WebDirect and went to lunch and came back and they were logged out, so those kinds of things you can control as the admin. We increased security. We updated Node.js to the version you see there. Any previous things that had security vulnerabilities were addressed there. And then, as I said, the availability. The thing I want to say about the availability is that with FileMaker Cloud 2025, it is compatible with versions 22 and version 21 of both Pro and Go. FileMaker Cloud 2024 went all the way back to 19, had 19 and 20 and 21. So those versions are being sunsetted. And so one of the things that we need to make sure is, before we turn on cloud and say these are the only versions supported, is encouraging as many of our customers as possible that are on the older versions to move forward, so we don't update the cloud and they can't access their apps. That's not a good look, and we don't want to do that. At some point, we're going to have to go over, but we are in the process right now of notifying customers. They have the ability to go in and just download through their customer console the FileMaker 2025 bits in order to do that. But we're trying to encourage people to move over. Going real quick to Studio, and just looking at the time here. So I'm sure you've heard over the years, we've been working on Studio for a while, and we've been working to try and make it more and more usable to people who are FileMaker developers. And there's a lot that needed to be done in order to make it stand up to that. So one of the things that we did do in FileMaker 2025 is we have much tighter integration between FileMaker Pro 2025 and Studio. And this is where we're taking advantage of webhooks and stuff, so that rather than having to put something in FileMaker, we'd expect it to immediately show up when we click out of the field. You would have to refresh the window or reload the browser to have it show up. And by using webhooks, we can prevent that. And it allows us to integrate the schema between Studio and FileMaker Pro much more eloquently. So there's a lot more capability, but that's fantastic. But at the same time, in order to make this usable, we needed to have it handle much larger data sets. And it was, after it got about 1,000 records, it would, really fall on its face. And that's just not the real world for what you guys do. It's now up to, 100,000 plus records very fast. So, not all the way where it needs to get, obviously, but a whole heck of a lot more usable. More secure so that you have the ability to do role-based data visibility. So depending upon what someone's role is, let's say they're only going to see the records that are associated with them rather than having access to everything. Those are just basic things that you take for granted in FileMaker is how you build a solution, and what was making Studio not as usable in the real world if you can't control those kinds of things. And then on top of that, we had been doing work all along with Studio, building it out. And now that you can, essentially what we're calling custom web portals, is you can mix and match in a single canvas the different things that we had delivered, like Kanban boards and calendars and galleries and spreadsheet view and all of that. So it allows you to put together something much more complex to deploy to users. And then there's a blog where we talk about the relationship between how FileMaker Pro 2025 and Claris Studio are interacting together at the data source level, and highly encourage you, if you're interested in that area at all, to take a look at this, because it's pretty impressive and it's pretty powerful. And in complementing that is we rolled out a new license where the vast majority of our users, especially if you have a annual volume license or a perpetual license that's under active maintenance, that you get access to Studio and Connect and Pro with your one license key. You no longer have to go and fill out a form and ask to have access to Claris Studio and then, wait for a couple of days or, whatever to just spin it up. You can now just go into your cloud console or your FileMaker admin consoles on your server if you have a license that is eligible for the Studio and Connect, and just spin it up yourself. It requires Claris ID, and so if you don't have a Claris ID, there is a process that that'll walk you through to establish that Claris ID first. If you do have one, you just log in with that. So that's the new licensing. At the base level of everyone's license, everyone has access to Studio, and everyone has access to Connect, and they have a certain amount of Studio views or a certain amount of Connect flows that are just come free with that. And then if they exceed that, then they can move up to the next tier where there's more availability. And so we put in information. So in the admin consoles, you can see how many flows you're consuming or how many views, so that you have some idea of when you might be getting there. And then of course we've done some work. We call it data everywhere. This is what I've been talking about, where FileMaker Pro and FileMaker Studio are working together at the schema level much more closely. And so depending upon, we're still fleshing out the use cases, but the thing that Studio really supports is especially something that the rest of our model doesn't, is sort of unknown number of unnamed users, right? So you got a form, you want to register 1,000 people. Well, certainly you're not going to, get a license that supports 1,000 users or have to, the name you, so it's completely anonymous. It's just a form. You would use custom web publishing or FM Better forms or something like that. Otherwise, but this makes it a lot easier just to do something in Studio and deploy it out to end users. We're also working on essentially this thought of, you can have named users, but more loosely outside of it, and have a customer-facing portal where a customer comes in, they enter something, and then they can go back in and they can see the status of it. So it's not just a one and done. I pushed something to you, but essentially it's like an extranet for customers. So that has a lot of versatility and some additional use cases as well. The studio. So that's just expanding out the platform more broadly. I'm going to talk about some of the updates we've done since we shipped in July. First, starting with FileMaker Pro, 22.0.2 is out. Some of the major things we did is this is the release where we went back in and did some work so that you could have multiple versions of FileMaker Pro running on Windows again. And that required us also to go back to FileMaker 2021 because those two needed to essentially communicate together, having to do with how the Windows registry works and that sort of thing. So we addressed that. And then there were some issues that came out from when we first launched. Conditional formatting when it was empty weren't showing correctly. There was an incorrect icon that was in layout mode that was confusing. Some issues with script steps quitting in certain instances where you're executing generate from response from model, or the go to list the record script step could quit unexpectedly if there were values in certain positions. So we caught that stuff and addressed that. And did some tweaking of the AI calls logging as well. There was an issue because of some of the changes we made to Sparkle and the updater, where people were constantly getting in product notifications every time FileMaker launched. So we were able to address that as well. As I said, we also pushed out an update of FileMaker 2024, which is 21.1.2. You can go down and get that from the where you get releases in the Claris website, but that was to allow both 21 and 22 to coexist in Windows as well. On Go, the only thing we needed to go in and do that is FileMaker Go, and initially for 2025 was pointing to the 2024 registration and help, and so that was addressed as well. On server, 22.0.2 came out, and we did a couple of things. A script for updating Ubuntu's Apache or Nginx web server has been added, so it makes it easier to make sure that you're running the correct version, and that can be updated as you need it. There's a couple of issues that we addressed. WebDirect wasn't displaying charts properly. It weren't rendering. You get some blank area, so we addressed that. In the admin console, when you went to the Adoptium link for the console's connectors, you got this error instead of going to the open JDK 17 download page is what it was supposed to do. So it was getting an error. We address some issue with the SSL certificates for Let's Encrypt that were getting an error and failing certain times, and then made some tweaks to on macOS and Ubuntu for exposing sensitive information. What we were logging when we were getting the LLM debugging, so we went back there and cleaned that up. And then we pushed out a version of FileMaker Server 2024, which is 21.1.6, addressing some of the external authentication issues that we had there and some installation issues. But also there was a security fix that was both in 2025 and we wanted to get in 2024 that was addressed as well. And so as we were going in there and going back to 2021, we wanted to take care of some of these issues with external authentication as well. And then I just want to point out there's a number of rich resources on our website. Obviously the online help, it's built right into the system. When you're writing scripts or functions, it'll You click on it, it'll tell you what to do, and there's always a little question mark there, and you can click on it, it'll take you off to your help. And some of it wasn't all done when we first shipped. I believe they have caught up, so all of the documentation should be there. Of course, we always have the technical specifications, and they're getting broader because of the advent of things like AI servers, and the kind of hardware you need depending upon what you're doing. So those are really good to look at, which models we support, and so on. Always good to look at the engineering blogs that we're pushing out as we relate to different things that we've done. As you know, there's always release notes associated with the release, and they've got a lot of good information in there. And of course, the Claris Academy, like I talked about, the new training from Mark Levershell is absolutely excellent, especially for people that first trying to get their head around, AI in FileMaker. And then we, people that need developers, we've got to find a developer. Obviously, we've got the community forum. There's AI, sub areas and others, and that's just an excellent resource to go to. And we have a community lives. I think we're going to 3 a month eventually, but at least 2 a month. Yesterday was the Mark Levershell one, where he did an excellent job of essentially talking about those script steps that he has the certification associated with. And at that, let me take a breath. And if there are any questions, I'll answer what I can, and I'll be honest about what I can't. And let me stop. Well, I will keep sharing, but I don't know if I'll be able to see a hand. So if people just want to unmute and speak up if there are any questions, or if there are things in chat, which I can't see, if someone wants to read those, I see there's 22 in there. So. Yeah, I just can't get to it. So I don't know if Saul or Dave or someone wants to.
Sure, let's see. Any news? Here's a question from Robert. Any news about Engage?
No, I don't have any news about Engage, but I expect that we'll be hearing something out of the marketing team this fall about when the next Engage is.
Okay. And Dave Knight has a question about compatibility with Mac OS Tahoe.
We are testing that right now, and I don't know if you've seen on the community, there are people that are running into some things. Technically, we're on the Apple FileMakers on the Apple Do Not Break list when they push out new operating systems, but that doesn't necessarily mean they don't break us, because they have greater concerns maybe than breaking FileMaker, but we're lucky to be there. So what we typically do is we look at every build. And then once the final golden master of the operating system comes out, typically we'll push out our next update. So, think about, end of October, sometime in November, we'll push out an update. If there is anything we needed to do in order to accommodate Tahoe, that would be in that release. And then we'll take the opportunity to do a lot of the other enhancements I was sort of insinuating when we did that. But yeah, we will fully support as usual.
Thank you. It looks like this question may have been answered by somebody, but I'll ask it anyway, just so you can verify. Is there imminent support for iOS, iPad OS 26 and the new UI stuff?
So yes, we will. When we push out the update I was just talking about, FileMaker Go will support all that as well. And I don't know if you're, as far as the new UI stuff, you're talking about the whatever the heck they're calling, the liquid glass or whatever, if that's what you're talking about.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. But that all should be supported when we support the new operating system.
Excellent. Thank you. Well, there's a lot of.
Rick.
Go ahead.
Rick, I don't know if you see it in the chat. While you were talking about the online help system being updated, I very coincidentally came across a place where I got a 404. And in when you click on the little question mark and define scripts for get table DDL, the online help, it looks like it's just the wrong URL, but the online help goes, I don't know, here's the index.
Okay. Yep, that's a bug.
Is there a better place to report that than just telling you in a prezo?
Just send me an email and then I'll get it to the right place. Yeah.
Okay, will do.
Yeah. Thanks.
Any other questions? I know, I mean, you had just so much information there.
The thing about FileMaker 2025 that's interesting, it is one of those substantial releases we've had for a while as far as, how much is in it and how impactful. For instance, the AI stuff alone probably would have been a release, right? So I have heard it described, like I said, this is my 17th user group where I've essentially been hawking the new stuff, and I have heard it described as a tsunami, right? And of course, a tsunami means there's so much to absorb, right? That it's just like, and if you're not living, eating, and breathing in our materials and the website, it's hard to keep track of all this stuff. And we have a pretty substantial update coming up that's can continue down this path. So we've always got to be sort of careful not to overwhelm people with so much stuff that, you don't even know what our product is capable of. And I'm sure we're already been in that boat since we've been iterating on it for 40 years. But this one has been especially interesting to see because I think more than anything, let's say that we had not done any of that AI stuff and it was just what I presented on the FileMaker side, and we didn't do Studio and connect integration, then it would have been much more absorbable. But the second you throw in now, if aren't doing anything with AI, then just ignore it, right? But pretty much it's something that I think a lot of people on this call would say it's not something that as a professional developer that can be ignored. It is, certainly we are still in the hype cycle, but we are rapidly, and I don't mean we in the sense of players of FileMaker, but just everyone that's using AI and LLM are rapidly, I think, getting to the point to understand where its strengths are, where its weaknesses are, and figuring out ways to be able to do it, get it to do the bidding that you want it to do. And but there's still a lot to learn, and it's not just us; it's everyone. But I don't think it's something that can be ignored, and certainly something that we are going to continue to invest heavily in. You will see. We've only done the side where you can take advantage of building solutions and then you can deliver to your customers. But you will see, and I think it's on our public roadmap on the community. We'll have coworkers for when you're writing scripts and when you're writing functions, and hopefully, ultimately, help instantiate layouts and that kind of thing. But yeah, at the same token, there's a lot of information out there on FileMaker scripts. Let's say there are 100 examples of how to do something. Maybe 5 of them are right, right? So how do you train it to know to differentiate, right? And so trying to give it all the intelligence it has of what FileMaker internally is capable of is part of the way to do that. But you know, those are especially for people that are just trying to learn the platform. At the same time, there is absolutely something to be said about understanding when you're writing a script or a calculation function what it's doing, right? And so, be careful that AI, you just take it, you tell it you want it, it gives it to you, you use it, and you have no idea, right? And did it do the right thing? Did it do something dangerous? This is why I'm saying we're still here at the bleeding edge, right? Which is good in a way, but it's something that cannot be ignored. It is if it is ignored as an organization, you're in jeopardy of being the next, Kodak or Polaroid or RIM, and just become obsolete because the world changed out from underneath you. So,
Yeah. I did have a personal question. You were talking about early on, that there were some issues with GPT-5 when it came out. I was wondering if there is like a recommended um, platform or AI model that seems to be really consistent and work well.
I mean, there is that's a good question. I mean, we have the models that we've tested in support, and those, are available in our tech specs. But this is obviously a rapidly evolving space. And then once you get into the world of Hugging Face and all of the open source models that are out there, there is a lot to take into consideration depending upon what it is you're trying to do. There are models that are much more efficient and smaller that may be good enough for the task you set it after. And there's models that have billions and billions of parameters, and they are big and they require big, hefty, expensive hardware to run. And so it all depends. And then you might want to do that on your AI server because you don't want any of your data going out from your organization to potentially be used to train models and capturing stuff you don't want. And so you want to take control of that by running your own AI server. But then the trade-off is, depending upon what you're doing, how much is that going to cost? All we're telling you is, besides development, when you're just testing yourself, do not deploy an AI server and a FileMaker server on the same box at the same time. And because especially if it's being used a lot, it's probably going to bring the server to its knees because it's going to suck all the resources that it needs because it wants GPUs. And GPUs obviously are a hot commodity these days. They're not cheap, right? It turns out that the latest Mac hardware is extremely good at running models, and so people are throwing these boxes after it. But if you want a model with 42 billion parameters, you're probably spending $10,000 on a box to support it, depending upon how many users. So there's a lot of what I would recommend, Saul, is if you go to Rich Carlton's FM TV or FM live TV that he does every day, he posts all of those things on YouTube. And Wim DeCourt did 5 days of on Rich Carlton's show where he walks through a lot of this, and there's a lot of good information in there. I always recommend, look, go there, play it at 2x. It'll take you half the time. I can always understand the 2x stuff, so I always do that. And then Todd's is fantastic as well. But Wim, especially if you're wanting to think about models, he spends a lot of time talking about, and Todd does as well. So it is a new area, right? It's a bit mind-boggling in the sense of everything that you could possibly do and the mix and match combination of them, and therefore, what do I do? Right? What do I choose? That's a lot of conversations going on. Yeah. And we're all essentially at the same point. This is what Todd and Wim did is said in their sessions as well, is that we're all beginners here. We're all learning, so we're laying down best practices, right? We're this stuff is we're all sort of there at the same time. So some people are further ahead than others. Matt Navarre and of course Chris Ippolite has been doing this for a while. Guys like Mike Wallace, who are just geniuses at this stuff. There are some people that are pushing the edge, and then there's a lot of people going, I think I better pay attention to this now. And my only caveat is start chatting with your data in FileMaker to begin to understand. If you haven't, to begin to understand, oh, this is interesting, right? What if I could enable my end users via natural language to accomplish stuff that was not possible or much harder before? Matt told the example of, I'm never going to write a report in FileMaker ever again the same way I used to, because there are better ways to do it. But we got to figure out the better ways and make sure that they are better ways, right? So that's sort of where we're at now.
Cool. Another question that I had is, are you guys internally, do you know if the developers, on the Claris staff are actually taking advantage of AI in the development? So, for example, I think, some of these companies like, I don't know, I want to say maybe Box.com, LinkedIn, some of them are saying like 50% of their development now is being used, or is being done with or by AI. Is that something that Claris is really doing as well?
Well, everyone in the organization is encouraged to use AI for their job. So I can imagine that our developers are, although I haven't heard anything specific, but the only caveat is that's not all true, what you're saying. And that's what I'm saying, is we get more and more, we begin to understand what it's good at and where it starts to fall apart. Like if you talk to Todd, it's like talk about agentic AI. And he's saying, well, if you run autonomous agents, and let's say you have three different ones that are communicating, if you don't have like each one of those at like 99%, you're going to get back, you think you're going to get back, they start to compound each other. And so what happens is you get to some level of complexity that we would just code for as developers that AI might not even be able to handle. And then when it can't handle it, what is it going to do? Right. And so if you haven't prompted it correctly and control it correctly, it might give you the wrong answer. It may hallucinate, if you will. So there's, I caution a lot of people to make sure you understand what it's doing, how far you can go. It's not a magic bullet, but it is absolutely phenomenally interesting, for sure. I mean, when you start having FileMaker people on podcasts talking about how human consciousness worked, which is one that Matt and Ronnie and Chris did using Star Trek as an analogy, it's a different world.
Cool. Well, thank you for that. Well, I guess we've hit the 1 p.m. Mark. So unless we have any other questions, we might wrap this up. Let's see, I think. And Dave is asking, and can AI help make related value lists better?
Probably.
Do you want to expand on that, Dave?
No, I was just joking.
Okay.
I was joshing at Rick because, hey, your question, Sol, about, hey, can AI be used to help build internal applications at companies like Dropbox, et cetera? And I was like, hey, can we use AI to make related value lists a little nicer there? So something to work on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you, everybody. This has been, the first session for me, leading one of these FMDiSC meetings, and even though I'm a little bit nervous, I think it went pretty well, and I appreciate Rick you being here, appreciate Matt and everybody. We've got a lot to look forward to in this FileMaker 2025, and I will be digging deep, as I'm sure many of you guys will be. So until the next one, I guess. Anything else, Dave, that you want to
No,
say?
I just want to say a big shout out, to all of our content contributors, and also special thanks to Sol for grabbing the reins and running his first ever FMDiSC meeting. So kudos and great job. Way better than my first FMDiSC meeting.
Mine too.
Well, thank you all. It's an honor to do this. It really is, and I look forward to many more. All right. Well, thank you all, and we will put together the videos. Since Matt's power went out, we're going to have two that we're going to have to probably stable together. So it might take a little bit longer than normal, but we'll get the video up as soon as possible, and we will see you on the next one. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks a lot, Saul.
Bye-bye.